अजं निर्विकल्पं निराकारमेकं निरानन्दमानन्दमद्वैतपूर्णं परं निर्गुणं निर्विशेषं निरीहं परब्रह्मरूपं गणेशं भजेम. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Namaste. Welcome to session 105 of Bhagavad Gita verse by verse. After completing chapter 13 and before we embark on chapter 14, today we will resume study of Mundakopanishad from where we left at the end of session 96. We will study verses 1 to 5 from section 2 of Mundaka 2. After the revision, after this study of these verses, we will have chanting of Todakashtakam by Srimati Aruna. Now, it's time for the introduction of today's class by Dr. Hegde sir. Over to you, sir.
Sadashiva Samarambam Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam. Om. We enter into a very interesting and important part of the Mundakopanishad where every verse is a Mahavakya. We will come across new terms like Avihi, Archimad, Otam, and we will see two verses dedicated to Omkara. I will use this opportunity of the introduction to speak about Om in the Bhagavad Gita and in the Upanishads. This is one of the Dhyana shlokas of Sri Dakshinamurti Stotra in a composition and a commentary of the Dakshinamurti Stotra by Sureshwaracharya. Om Nama Pranavarthaya Shuddha Jnaneka Murtaye Nirmalaya Prashantaya Dakshinamurtaye Namaha. In this verse, Sureshwaracharya compares Dakshinamurti with Omkara. Omkara or Dakshinamurti is an embodiment of Omkara, who represents pure knowledge, who is absolutely pure and peaceful. We have reference to Omkara in the Kathopanishad in response to a question by Nachiketa. Nachiketa was very clear among the three boons that the third boon he wanted was Brahma Vidya. And in the one previous verse, in the 14th verse, he makes his question to Yamadharmaraja very clear. O Bhagwan, O my Lord, please tell me something other than dharma and adharma, something beyond 3 periods of time, something beyond cause and effect. And in response to that question, that ultimate question on Brahma Vidya, Yamadharmaraja emphasizes about Om. He says, Tatte Padam Sangramhena Bravim Om Iti Etad. That which is the answer to your question is Om. And he elaborates, Sarve Veda Yat Padam Amananti. That which is extolled in all the Vedas. Tapamsi Sarvani Chayad Vadanti. All the tapasyas speak about that same entity. Yad icchanto brahmacharyam charanti. In order to be able to attain, people lead a life of brahmacharyam. That goal which everybody is seeking is none other than Omkara itself. The teacher in this Upanishad goes on to extol Om as Yetad Eva Aksharam Brahma. Omkara itself is Brahman. Etad Eva Aksharam Param. Omkara is the highest. Etad Eva Aksharam Jnatva. One who knows this. Yo Yad Ichchati Tasya Tat. Such a person, if a person who knows Omkara is able to get whatever he desires. And the praise continues in the next verse, in the 17th verse, like this. Yetad alambanam sreshtam. This symbol, this pratika is sreshta, is the highest. Yetad alambanam param also means the highest. Etad alambanam jnatva, one who knows Omkara is regarded very high in the world of Brahman. The Bhagavad Gita 8th chapter is a replica, as a slight modification of these verses. And you will remember the 8th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Sri Krishna gives us a new type of mukti called Krama Mukti. Here the scene is a person who is in his deathbed, and Sri Krishna wants us to remember God at the time of death. And there again, he gives this same mantra which Yamadharmaraja gives with a slight modification. Yad aksharam veda vido vadanti. Those who know the Vedas, they speak about it. Vishanti yad yatayo vitaraga. Yataya means the sages, the sannyasis. They attain to vitaraga. Vitaraga means vairagya. Remember, Omkara is an upasana mantra given to sannyasis because it is supposed to give a lot of vairagya. Generally, Omkara is not given for a grihastha because it has the ability to give you a lot of vairagya. Even the Gayatri mantra is not given to a sannyasi, but Omkara is given in that place. Yad icchanto brahmacharyam charanti tadte padam sangrahena pravakshe. I'm going to speak about that. And what does he say? Om iti ekaksharam brahma vyavaharan mam anusmaran. In addition to chanting of Omkara, in addition to dhyana on Omkara, remember me. At what time? Ya prayati tyajan deham. At the time of giving up one's body. Sayati param gatim. Such a person will attain to the highest. Now we'll jump to the 17th chapter. In the 17th chapter, Shri Krishna gives us a very powerful mantra. And he explains about the significance of Om Tat Sat in that mantra. Going back to the Upanishads, in the Shiksha Valli, there is a verse, a very popular verse, which gives a lot of praise of Omkara. But if you see the verse, you will not realize, there is no direct reference to Om, but one has to infer that we are talking about Om itself. Yes, Chandasam Rishabho Vishwarupaha. That which is the best of all the Vedas, in that Shiksha Valli is a praise about Omkara. And these verses continue. Om iti Brahma, Om iti idam sarvam. Om is Brahman, Om is everything. Come to the 11th verse of Kaivalya Upanishad. And in this 11th verse, our Ahankara, the seeker, the pramata in all of us is compared to the lower arani. Atmanam aranim kritva. The higher arani. That means in order to create a spark in the fire, you have this arani example. And pranava chotararanim. So, jnana nirmathana abhyasat pasham dahati panditaha. All the bondage gets burnt up when you meditate or when you do Omkara Vichara. In Kenopanishad, there is no direct reference to Om, but you have Uma Devi who can be taken as Omkara, who comes and instructs to Lord Indra, and therefore indirectly Uma can be taken as Omkara in the Kenopanishad. The ultimate source of all knowledge on Omkara is in the Mandukya Upanishad. And in the Mandukya Upanishad begins with Hari Om. Om iti yetad aksharam idam sarvam. Om is everything. Tasyopa vyakhyanam. I will elaborate a little more on it. Bhutam bhavit bhavishyad iti sarvam omkara eva. Everything that is past, present, and future is about Om. And what about that which is beyond time? Yachant trikala tita tadapi omkara eva. That which is beyond the 3 periods of time, if there is something like that, that is also Omkara. The second verse is a very famous verse because it is a Mahavakya. Sarvam etad Brahma, ayamatma Brahma, soyamatma chatuspar. So only 12 verses, and in these 12 verses, there is 2 aspects to it. The first aspect is the Atma Vichara. From the 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th is Atma Vichara. And from the 8th, 9th up to the 12th verse becomes Omkara. Omkara has got different padas. And whereas the Atma has got the 4 aspects of Atma and the 4 aspects of Omkara are being compared. Ishavasya Upanishad has a prayer. And in the prayer, Omkara comes in this form. Vayur anilam amritam adhedam basmantam shariram Om kratosmaram kritam swara kratosmara kritam smara. Om comes in the form of a prayer in the Ishavasya Upanishad. We have 2 more beautiful verses on Omkara, which we will study in this Upanishad. I will conclude, in addition to knowing all about Omkara, which we do in the Gita and the Upanishads, let us make this an exercise that wherever possible and whenever possible, to meditate on this very powerful mantra. Omkara bindu samyuktam nityam dhyayanti yoginaha kamadam mokshadam chaiva Omkaraya namo namaha. Omkara bindu samyuktam nityam dhyayanti yoginaha. The yogis all the time meditate on this Omkara. Why? It is able to fulfill all your desires, including moksha. We will begin with the opening verse, which will be explained to us by Dr. Anupama. Dr. Anupama, please.
Shri Gurubhyo Namaha, Mantra 1. Avihi sannihitam guhacharam nama mahat padam yat atra etad samarpitam ejat pranat nimishat cha yat etad janatha sadasad varenyam param vijnanat yat varishtam prajanam. The Anvaya goes like this. Tat mahat, meaning the Paramatma. Avihi sannihitam guhacharam nama, meaning the Jivatma, bhavati. This is the Mahavakya. Ejat pranat nimishat cha bhavati. Yet etad atra samarpitam. Sadasat varenyam varishtam prajanam vijnanat param bhavati. Etad janatha. Avihi here means self-effulgent consciousness. Sannihita means evidently existent consciousness. Why? Because everything is evident only because of consciousness. Nama means well known as Guhacharam, the indweller of the dark, meaning ignorant mind. This is the Tvampada Lakshyartham. Mahat Padam is the great Aspadam, the great Adhishtanam, or the support of every existent thing in this world, be it the moving ones, Ejata, the breathing ones, Pranata, the blinking ones, Nimishata, and so on. This is the Tattva Lakshyartha. This implies that everything, every being in creation is based on Brahman. Yet etad atra samarpitam. This Brahman is with or without form, sadasat. It is the greatest thing to be sought, varishtam varenyam. It is beyond the comprehension of lay people, yet prajanat vijnanat param. Let's understand avihi sannihitam guhacharam. Every sensory experience is a revelation that it is this Brahma Chaitanyam, or consciousness within us, that illumines and empowers the sense organs by its mere presence, sannihitam, without doing anything. In reality, there is only one pure existence consciousness, which cannot be objectified, but is recognized as I, the subject. This mantra says that this pure existence, which is everywhere, is recognizable, upalabhyate, in the hridayam, the mind of every individual, as pure consciousness, or the chaitanyam, which we call Jivatma. Now, Have we localized this pure consciousness by using the word Jivatma? No. It only means that pure consciousness in the form of Jivatma is recognizable in the medium of the mind. Guhacharam does not literally mean moving in the mind, but it is that consciousness which, when reflected in the moving thoughts of the mind, seemingly moves as vritti jnanam, as pratibodha viditam matam. This mantra is a mahavakyam because it equates Guhacharam or the Jivatma, the Chit, with Mahat, the Paramatma or Sat. Chit eva Sat, Sat eva Chit. The inference being Yat etad atra samarpitam, meaning I, the consciousness, am the very adhishtanam of everything, and being all-pervading, everything is located in me, the consciousness Atma. Quoting Manisha Panchakam, Brahma eva aham, idam jagatcha sakalam, chinmatra vistaritam, meaning the essence of this world is the essence of me. In reply to Shaunaka's question, what is that knowing which everything worth knowing is known? The teacher Angiras answered, Jnanata etad, know this to be Sat Brahman, the pure existence, which is not only the basis or aspadam of everything, but is inherent as Atma in everything. This pure existence, when associated with Nama Rupa Jagat, gives us the notion that Sat Atma, the Paramatma, becomes the Karanam, whereas the Asat Jagat, including the Jivatma, the Murta Amurta Prapancha, is the Karyam. In conclusion, this Brahma Jnanam is the most exalted to be sought after, Varishtam Varenyam, because it is Nityam. This knowledge is distinct from the realm of worldly or objective sciences. The Guru says, O disciples, may you recognize this Brahman and become free. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Anupama, for giving us a very clear explanation of a very difficult verse. So in this section, we have very loaded verses. The key verse here being Avihi, that illuminator, which is located in the cave of my heart, and which is none other than the Paramatma. And as I see this verse, as you explain, it is very similar to this verse, the 10th verse, which we studied earlier. Purusha eva idam vishwam karma tapo brahma paramritam yetad yu veda nihitam guhaya so vidya grantim vikirati hi saumya. I also appreciate your ability to explain this within a very short notice of 24 hours. The next verse, which is another similar verse and another very difficult verse, will be explained to us by Dr. Komal Prasad. Over to you, Dr. Komal.
Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Mundakopanishad, second Mundaka, second Khanda, Mantra 2. As we know, Mundakopanishad has 3 Mundakas, there's 3 chapters, and each chapter has 2 Khandas. And now we are dealing with second Mundaka, second Khanda, in that second mantra. Yad Archimata, Yad Anubhyo Anucha, that which is luminous, subtler than the subtlest. Yasmin Loka Nihita Lokinachcha, in which all the worlds and the universe and the cosmos, as well as its inhabitants, are existent. Tadetad Aksharam Brahma, know that as the indestructible reality. Sa Pranaha, Taddu Vang Manaha, that is the life force, as well as speech, as well as the mind. Tadetad Satyam, Tadamritam, that is the reality, that's immortality. Tad Vedavyam Somya Vidhi, that is the target. Oh dear, penetrate that. Is it? Get it. Strive. That's the worthy goal to go ahead. So here, and as in the continuity from the first verse, It is like a business card of Brahman. So it explains Brahman's various aspects from the cosmic angle as well as from the macrocosmic angle as well as from the microcosmic angle. So we can infer it as to be a Mahavakya mantra. Yet Archimat. Archimat here is the Avi, which is mentioned in the first verse. Both means the same. That's the light principle. Here we have to understand very clearly what in Vedantic scriptures, how consciousness is compared to light. We should understand the significance of this comparison. What is the definition of light? We can say, in a way, light is that in whose presence things are known and in whose absence things are not known. That is called light in Vedanta Shastra. All the lights, let it be electric light, the fire, the sun, the moon, the stars, they're called light because light is that in whose presence things are known and in whose absence things are not known. Then, giving this definition, Vedanta takes you further. It extends the concept of light further. Even though because of sun, moon, etc., I am able to experience the world, the sun, moon, etc., they themselves are experienced because of what? I experience the world because of sunlight. But I experience sunlight because of what? It's because of our sense organ, the eyes. So if eyes are not there, neither can I experience the sun, nor I can experience the world, in spite of sun being there. Therefore, Vedanta says, every sense organ is a light. Here we are coming to figurative concepts. Every sense organ is a light because in its presence, the world is experienced. In its absence, in the absence of sense organs, the entire world is blacked out. Therefore, Vedanta says, not only sun is the light, sense organs are also figuratively light. Extending it further, the Vedanta then asks the question, the sense organs themselves are able to experience their object under what condition? Only when there is a mind behind the sense organ. If the mind is not behind, the eyes may be open, but it will be a vacant stare. You won't see anything. So Vedanta says, mind is a greater light. Without the mind, sense organs are useless. Sun is useless. Moon is useless. Everything is useless. Everything gets blacked out. That's why in deep sleep state, when the mind does not function, everything is blacked out. Now the final question comes, mind itself is known because of what principle? The mind itself has got varieties of emotions coming and going, emotions and thoughts. How do we know all this? Because of what principle? What is that consciousness principle? Because of which I am conscious of my mental condition, the raga, dvesha, kama, krodha, moha, mind. Mind is that intimate object. The mind itself is objectified and experienced, aware of by what? That is the unchanging consciousness. Consciousness changelessly reveals the changing thoughts. The changeless consciousness principle revealing the changing thought is called Archimat, Avi. In Vedanta, it's called the light of all the lights. The primary, original light of all the lights is consciousness. Only if the conscious light is there, mind can serve as the light. Sense organ can serve as the light. Sun, moon, etc. can serve as the light. Only in the presence of this consciousness principle, the unchanging, ultimate light behind all the lights, that's the light of consciousness. So, this is the business card, visiting card of Brahman. We saw the first word, the Archimat. Then comes Anubhyo anucha. It is subtler than the subtlest. Don't take it as smaller than the smallest, not like an atom. It is subtle. So in Vedantic parlance, as things get subtler and subtler, it gets more significance. It is subtler than the subtlest. Ismin loka nihita lokinascha. That means in which all the lokas, the entire universe is hung in place along with its inhabitants, in which all these worlds, the various worlds, various lokas are existent. Tad etad aksharam. That is that indestructible reality. Brahma. Sa pranaha. Here again, we can see like from the macrocosmos, from the various worlds which are existent. Now, on the other hand, taking it from our own microcosmic side, that itself is the pranaha. Taddu vang manaha. It is not just the life force, it's also the speech, the mind behind this. Tad etat satyam. That is that reality. Tad etat satyam. That this is the reality. Tad amritam. That is immortality. Tad vedavyam. Somya vidhi. So here we can see the ecstasy, the excitement, the proclamation by the Guru in which he prods his dear student. That is the one, that's the ultimate nectar you need to aim at. You need to ace it. You need to get it. That is your goal. That is the target. So this word is important because in the further verses, we see what is the target and how to achieve it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Komal, for a nice explanation of another key verse where the same illuminator, which we heard as Avihi in the previous verse, is now referred to as Archimat. And because of this Archimat, that is that which we need to realize, and that is the target that we need to seek. And because of that, we have the subsequent bow and arrow example, which will be explained to us by Dr. Vishwanath. Over to you, Dr. Vishwanath.
Mantra 3. The second khanda of second Mundaka is about realizing Brahman through various examples. The last two verses covered the location of Brahman, how does it look like, how to trace Brahman, etc. The last verse spoke of the descriptions of Supreme Purusha and asked the Vedantic students to set him as a target or a goal. This verse has a title, Preparing to Shoot Brahman. The verse recitation, Dhanur Grihitva Upanishadam Maha Astram, Sharam Hi Upasa Nishitam, Sanda Ita or Sanda Dita, Ayamya Tad Bhava Gatera Chetasa, Lakshyam Tad Eva Aksharam, Somya Vidhi. Next slide, Doctor. Meaning of keywords, Dhanur Grihitva means bow, which is a great weapon of Upanishadic knowledge. Sharam represents the well-sharpened arrow, which is Jivatma. The sharpening is done through several years of sadhanas that is adequate enough to reach the target called Brahman. Ayamya, drawing the strings of the bow with a firmly fixed arrow, meaning leave out all worldly desires and look within. Lakshyam tad eva aksharam. Lakshyam means target. Aksharam here means Brahman. Next slide, Doctor. In this verse, spiritual goal through Vedantic study is compared to archery. Here, Jivatma or the seeker is compared to an arrow. What type of seeker? The one who is sharpened and straightened with systematic study of Vedanta teachings over a length of time under the guidance of a competent guru. Paramatma or Karana Ishvara is compared to the target. As long as there is no gap between Jivatma and Paramatma, we have insecurity. This insecurity is called ignorance. Through the archery called Vedantic study, which is Karma Yoga, Upasana Yoga, Shravana Mananam Nididhyasanam, the gap called ignorance between Jivatma and Paramatma is removed. There is a word called aikyam in the last line of this verse, which is drawing the string of bow along with the arrow before releasing it, meaning drawing your mind from external world, which is Karya Prapancha, into the inner self of self, the Karana Ishvara. The distance between Jivatma and Paramatma is called ignorance. There is a small error or adhyasa in this example because between arrow and the target, there is no physical distance, but there is physical distance, but there is no physical distance between Jivatma and Paramatma. There is also no time lag or space lag between the arrow and the target, as Paramatma is all-pervading and is available here and now. However, our understanding becomes crystal clear with this example. So, you are neither reaching Paramatma nor becoming one, as you're already that. You understand you're already that when you remove ignorance through Vedantic sadhanas. Who is an archer here? This verse does not say who is the teacher, who is the archer. We should assume Jivatma itself as an archer and arrow, or you can assume your guru as an archer, but Upanishad does not say that. Guru can be described as an archer because Guru handholds you in the entire journey of spiritual study. Just to further emphasize this beautiful mantra, I have another example of an Olympic archer. The archer does several years of preparation to win the Olympic archery competition. Their food habits, their daily exercise, their sleep cycles, their sacrifices on what they drink, what the mental preparedness is, how they practice focus, how they eliminate distractions, and how they practice thousands and thousands of arrows that they shoot before Olympics. They practice concentration for hours along the day. These are sadhanas to achieve their final goal of winning gold medal in Olympics. Similarly, Jivatma arrow needs to be sharpened with the help of Vedantic sadhanas to remove ignorance over several years before the arrow merges with Paramatma, the all-pervading consciousness. The biggest takeaway from this verse is conquering ignorance. Hari Om.
Thank you, Dr. Vishwanath, for giving us a very nice explanation of a very key verse, which gives us this bow and arrow example, which makes the Mundakopanishad very famous for this example. We have a next verse, which is a similar verse, which will be explained by Dr. Anupama. Dr. Anupama, please.
Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Mantra 4, a reinforcement of what was just explained. Pranavo dhanuhu sharohi atma brahmatalakshyam uchyate apramattena vedavyam sharavat tanmayo bhavet. Continuing with the archery analogy, this mantra actually gives us the details of the comparison between archery and Brahma Vidya. The bow, as has already been explained, is comparable to Pranava or Omkara. Pranavo dhanuhu. Pra means perfect and Nava means name. Pranava therefore means the perfect name for Brahman. The arrow is compared to Jivatma or the seeker, Sharohi Atma. And who is this Jivatma? Brahmastha, Brahman enclosed in the body, as Krishna has described, Paramatma eti chayuko dehe asmin purushaha param. Brahmatalakshyam uchyate. Brahman is the target or destination of Jivatma. And who's the archer? As has already just been explained, though not mentioned in the text, we could assume it is the Guru. What is the relevance of this comparison? The means or facilitator, the praveshaka, Karanam, bow in archery, and Pranava or Omkara in Brahma Vidya. The quality of instrument. The arrow should be straight and sharp. The Jivatma should be samskriyamana. As Krishna says, Aneka Janma Samsiddha. He should have Jnana Yogyata, having pursued Karma and Upasana Yoga. The practice is needed for proper anchorage of the arrow upon the bow. Similarly, the Jivatma has to do Omkara Vichara, Abhyasa Mana Pranava. What is the significance of Pranava? Does the Jivatma do Omkara Upasana? No. If so, he's heading for Krama Mukti. But now he's a sadhana chatushtaya sampanna. Remember, he's a parikshalokan karmajitan brahmana. He's now pursuing Brahma Vidya, practicing Omkara Vichara, and heading for moksha. Omkara Vichara could mean Prapanchatraya Vichara, Avastatraya Vichara, or as in Mundakopanishad, Akara or the Pratama Pada referring to Vishwavirat, the Ukara or Dvitiya Pada referring to Taijasa Hiranyagarbha, and the Makara or Tritiya Pada to Prajna Ishvara. Each of these pairs resolve into Turiyam. The culmination of this Omkara Vichara should be Aham Brahma Asmi. The Jivatma is refined by the removal of Ajnana or self-ignorance, Samshaya or doubts, and Viparyaya, that is Vasanas in the form of Deha Vasana, that is identification with the body-mind complex, Vishaya Vasana, identification with possessions, obligations, relationships, and transactions, port, and Shastra Vasanas, obsession with Sanskrit grammar, with one missing the message or tatparyam of the Shastras. Finally, what is the result of this practice? Just as the arrow strikes the target perfectly, Jivatma merges with Paramatma. However, there are some subtle differences. The nature of travel in archery is physical and external. In Brahma Vidya, it's notional, internal. Distance in archery is from point A to point B. It is spatial. In Brahma Vidya, it is cognitive. The journey is from ignorance to knowledge. The union in archery is an association. The arrow physically abides in the target. In Brahma Vidya, it is dissociation. The Jivatma drops identification with the body-mind complex. Apramattena vedavyam. To strike the target, one has to be well focused. Pramada means an unrefined mind. In the Vedantic context, it means a mind that dwells on port. Pramatta is one who possesses this mind, and apramatta is one who's free from port. A Shamadhi Shatka Sampanna. Apramattena lakshyam brahma vedavyam therefore means, with the help of this refined mind, the target Brahman must be struck by me, the Sakshi Asanga Chaitanyam, in the form of a thought, a conviction, Aham Brahma Asmi. Sharavat Tanmayo, just as a sharp arrow remains anchored in the target, the Jivatma, as Sakshi Asanga Chaitanya, merges with Paramatma by dissociating with the mind. The Jivatma now looks upon himself as Aham Brahma Asmi, Advaita Atmanishta, soaked in Paramatma permanently, Tanmayo Bhavet. This is the phalam of Brahma Vidya. This Sakshi status is lost when I identify with the mind. I become a Pramata. The moment I slip, samsara is waiting to swallow me. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Anupama. That was another wonderful explanation. Both you and Dr. Vishwanath have nicely explained the bow and arrow example in Mundaka. And also, every example has its own limitations, which has been clarified very well by both of you. We finally come to the last and a very important verse today, On the same lines, where we will understand something called Otam. What is that which is in and through? What is that which Shaunaka came asking for? And that will be explained to us by Dr. Kiran. Dr. Kiran, please.
Hari Om, Gurubhyo Namaha. The notional difference and the similarities which was explained in Dr. Anupama will study further. Before that, let us study the 5 important capsules of Vedanta which Swami Paramarthananda often refers to. I am of the nature, eternal and all-pervading consciousness. I am the only source of permanent security, peace and happiness. By my mere presence, noted, I give life to this material body, and through this material body, I experience the whole material universe. And I am not at all affected by any event that happens in this universe or in this material body. By forgetting my real nature, I convert life into a burden. And by remembering my real nature, I convert life into a sport or leela. Let us remember what this real nature is. Mahagruhastha Shaunaka started with the question, Kasminno Bhagavo, what is that knowing which everything becomes known? And Angirasa answers here, Esmin Thou, that is this 3 lokas, including Antariksha, that is the space, or if it is like a cloth, and the thread which is behind it are interwoven, that is Otam, that is the God. That's what he says. Let us study this further. Next slide, please. Next slide. Yeah. And he also says, Mana Saha Pranay, that is this mind, prana, all the energies, also is ultimately the Paramatma. So the macro world outside and the micro world that is inside, all is one Paramatma or Atma. Next slide. Where is this Atma? Who is it? And how far is it? How far is heat of the fire? How far is the illumination of the light? How far is the sweetness of the sugar? Or that much near this Atma is to us. He is the Sakshi of this body. If on drama of life, we grow from child, son, father, wife, husband, everything, he is the Sakshi of all this running through. And ultimately, when the stage becomes empty and this body is to be disposed of, he is the Sakshi, unchanging witness of that too. Next slide, please. And this witness, that is formless, colorless, isness, that is the witness of everything and is witness of nothing, the empty chair. This isness is Paramatma or pure existence. And everything else that is with Nama Rupa is world. So remove Nama Rupa, the existence alone remains, that is I, the very subject, the Sakshi, the Chaitanyam, which lends everything existence. And I am this consciousness, Aham Brahma Asmi. Similar to how the dream is created by me, with the help of Maya Shakti, I create this whole world, or this whole world unfolds in me alone. That is like how a thread ultimately becomes the cloth. This Brahman ultimately becomes the world. Next slide, please. And what are the 3 fears we have? That is old age, disease, and death. This what prompted Siddhartha to seek the truth, because that alone gives the answer. This alone, Nachiketa said he wanted when Yama offered all the boons. Why is that? Because we always live in this effect or the Karya Prapancha, and only the knowing the ultimate truth or the Karana makes us get rid of these fears. Otherwise, it will always be there. And if we remove this emotion and know the world as it is, like a pure reflecting mind, then we know the Brahman as it is. Tameva ekam janat. This is the only thing which we need to know. So spend a lot of time knowing this. What is this? Eka, Sara, Nitya, Satyam. And this is the ultimate karanam of everything, the only thing worth knowing. So when to start? Now is the time to start. Next slide, please. And this knowledge is only the only bridge, Amritasya Saitu. That is, as you see in the famous Fatehpur Sikri, all the karma yoga, upasana yoga, etc., ultimately leads to the gnanam, and gnanam alone takes us to the higher loka, that is the immortality. Anya vacho vimuchanta. So after gaining knowledge, we should give up all other theories and talks, apara vidya, and convert our worry time into meditation time. And because why? Because this knowledge is not just for using. This is to be held throughout life, especially when old age and death comes. And we can drop all other knowledge except this vimuchanta. And what is this great answer? When Sugriva was chased by Vali everywhere, but only place he could not go is this Rishyamukha Parvata. Similar to that, only place where death does not chase us is refuge in this Atma. Paramatma is the pure existence, isness, and negate the body, mind. And when we close our eyes, what we is revealed is the pure silence. This is consciousness. Hence, the pure existence outside is equal to pure consciousness inside. So this verse is a Mahavakya. And this is the only thing we need to know. Ishvara and the world we start with. Then we realize that Ishvara is in the world. Then we move on to Ishvara is in me. And then last we come to Ishvara is me. Aham Brahma Asmi. And then we realize Ishvara alone is Ishavasyam Idam Sarva in the form of real I, the Chaitanyam. Tameva Eka Janata. The only thing you need to know. Shaunaka's question is answered here. Thank you very much. Namaste.
Thank you, Dr. Kiran. That was a brilliant explanation, bringing out the very practical significance of this great verse. And every verse in the Ishavasya Upanishad you will see is so loaded. It was very nice that you brought out those 5 capsules, which help us to use each verse. And you very nicely said, so much of our time is spent on unnecessary worry, because we have deviated or given so much importance to the world rather than that which is worth knowing. And in that worrying time, if we can take it as upasana time, as a time for japa sadhana or Omkara vichara, we will utilize this opportunity to be able to attain to Parama Purushartha. With that, we come to the conclusion of today's class, where we have studied very profound 5 verses. We will conclude with the chanting of this Totakashtakam. And just as an announcement, we will have in the next class, we will continuing to have these Disha series. And in these Disha series, our next class will be on the 4th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, where Shri Krishna emphasizes about inaction in action. That means whenever you are working, or what is the climax of Karma Yoga, in what way you will be able to do your action without really putting in any effort. And that we will see on the 11th of July. I will request Aruna ji to give us the chanting of Totakashtakam. Aruna, please.
Hari Om. This composition, the Totaka Ashtakam, is a composition of a disciple of Adi Shankara who came to be known as Totakacharya. Giri, which was his original name, was considered a dull disciple, not able to grasp the Shastras and not knowing Sanskrit, as well as the other disciples. So the others looked down on Giri. One day, Bhagwan Shankara decided to teach them a lesson. He didn't start the lesson saying that he would wait for Giri. The others laughed. Then Giri walked in after completing all his chores. And as he walked in, he sang this Ashtakam, 8 verses in Sanskrit, glorifying the greatness of his Guru. Hearing this, the other disciples were wonderstruck, and they realized that it was all the sankalpa of the great teacher, that enabled him to compose this beautiful Ashtakam. Since this Ashtakam is in a meter called Totaka Vrittam, Giri got the name Totakacharya. विदिताखिल शास्त्र सुधा जलधे महितोपनिषद कथितार्थ निधे हृदये कलये विमलं चरणं भव शंकर देशिक मे शरणं भव शंकर देशिक मे शरणं करुणावरुणालय पालय मां भवसागर दुःख विदून हृदं रचयाखिल दर्शन तत्त्वमिदं भव शंकर देशिक मे शरणं भव शंकर देशिक मे शरणं भव निज बोध विचारण चारुमते कलयेश्वर जीव विवेक विदं भव शंकर देशिक मे शरणं भव शंकर देशिक मे शरणं भव एव भवानिति मे नितरां समजायत चेतसि कौतुकिता मम वारय मोह महाजलधिं भव शंकर देशिक मे शरणं भव शंकर देशिक मे शरणं सुकृते धिकृते बहुधा भवतो भविता समदर्शन लालसता अतिदीनमिमं परिपालय मां भव शंकर देशिक मे शरणं भव शंकर देशिक मे शरणं जगतीमवितुं कलिता कृतयो विचरन्ति महामहसश्चलतः अहिमांशुरिवात्र विभासि गुरो भव शंकर देशिक मे शरणं गुरु पुंगव पुंगवते तनते समतामयतां नहि कोऽपि सुधी शरणागत वत्सल तत्त्वनिधे भव शंकर देशिक मे शरणं भव शंकर देशिक मे शरणं विदिता न मया विशदैककला न च किंचन कांचन अस्ति गुरो धृतमेव विधेहि कृपा सहजां भव शंकर देशिक मे शरणं भव शंकर देशिक मे शरणं भव शंकर देशिक मे शरणं हरि ओम थैंक यू
Thank you, Aruna Madam, for a divine chanting. Thank you all teachers for a wonderful session. Next Friday, on 15th of July 2022, we will take up chapter 14. Before that, on Monday, 11th July, let us log in for Disha 17 at 6:45 p.m. Hari Om. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om.